we can do this. We have to be able to do it.
I just got out of a product development meeting for the SD expansion card, and wow, there is so much I want to share with you. But before I drop any specs, architecture, or design choices, here's a quick overview of the framework product development process. This is the framework product development process, or PDP for short. Every single product that we release, from laptops to expansion cards to power adapters, goes through this process. There are 7 phases in the PDP: discovery, incubate, EVT, DVT, PVT, MP, and ecosystem. Our hardware team works through each step in series. As each step adds a layer of complexity, we hold a phase exit meeting to make sure that everyone's on the same page about the phase's outcomes and everyone knows what to expect before moving on to the next step. So back to the product development meeting. Typically, this first meeting would just be covering discovery, where we as a team decide what product we want to make next. But because the hardware team already tried working on the SD expansion card in the past and they're just excited to get started, we get to warp pipe straight to incubate. This doesn't typically happen in our product development process and is only possible due to all the explorations that our team did in the past. So if discovery is the step where we figure out what product we want to make, what does incubate entail?
Each different function, we'll talk to different parts of why we believe we need to work on this program further and invest more time, and also some of the key challenges that we're going to face in the coming weeks.
That's Zach McGarvey, the technical program manager of the SD expansion card project. Zach's role is to lead the project, track and resolve risks, and make sure that the right members of the framework team are included in the product development process at the right time. He also maintains deadlines and drives the product all the way through the PDP. If there's anything you want to know about the SD expansion card, Zach's your guy. Our industrial design, engineering, and supply chain teams have spent the past few weeks exploring potential ways of bringing this product to life, but they haven't done any physical manufacturing or engineering work yet. So far, everything's just been on paper to estimate feasibility and risks. Typically in the product development process, Nick or Narav lead the conversation about a new product. Our different functions like engineering, supply chain, and marketing then propose technical, operational, or commercial considerations for or against it. After each team presents their findings, we then work as a group to define product requirements. I think my favorite part about the framework product development process is how genuinely collaborative the effort is.
Let's keep going. So ID direction, I think Nick and Esther, this one's pretty straightforward.
So the SD expansion card will have a standard expansion card form factor. It'll plug into the expansion card slots via USB-C and sit flush to the chassis. If you want to hear more about the expansion card system's design history and process, you can watch our last episode. But the engineering that goes inside the expansion cards and the custom card receptacle, well, that's a different story. The thing that makes the SD expansion card so much harder to produce than any of our other expansion cards is just how tight the design is electrically and mechanically.
We have to customize this spatial connector because our space limitation.
That's Alfie, our mechanical engineer. He just proposed 2 mechanical solutions to the SD expansion card size problem. One is to use an expansion card housing that looks similar to our Ethernet cards housing. It's a little bulkier and doesn't fit flush to the chassis. This gives the electrical team a little bit more wiggle room to make the design more feasible. Option 2 is to keep the standard expansion card chassis, but it means that the electrical engineering team will have to squeeze the circuit design into a much smaller area. So the first option that Alfie brought up actually goes against the ID proposal from Nick and Esther. And that's not a bad thing here. That's actually one of the key features of the framework PDP at play. So when Alfie was coming up with the mechanical proposal and Esther and Nick were working on the industrial design direction, they were actually coming up with their ideas independently. This way we're able to come up with product requirements through multiple perspectives, rather than having one person come up with an idea that may not be logistically feasible, but needs to be made anyway.
We've seen community members use off-the-shelf SD card adapters, take a file to the edge to slightly file down the PCB and the receptacle and fit it in, and it's the same size as a normal expansion card. And that's, with no custom tooling, obviously no custom PCBA. It's literally just an off-the-shelf product that happened to be the right size.
During his mechanical explorations, Alfie actually reached out to our expansion card manufacturer and asked them if they'd be willing to produce the SD expansion card in the same way that our community does. But unfortunately, filing off-the-shelf PCBs and connectors isn't a practical or scalable solution. Their robots just don't do that kind of work.
And so for us, doing a custom receptacle, doing a custom PCBA, we can do this. We have to be able to do it.
So we've made a decision. The SD expansion card is going to have the standard expansion card form factor. But Alfie's only challenge isn't maximizing the expansion card's very limited real estate. He'll also have to design a custom SD card receptacle. Designing and manufacturing a custom SD card receptacle, or any connector for that matter, does make a project more complex and more expensive. But we want to do it right, so it's worth the extra cost and complexity. And then there's the question of feature set.
So basically, we have to take our bet. We're going to launch this thing in, let's say, a year from now. Is the landscape going to be any different? And then if we look at the next 3 or 4 years, do we think the landscape is going to change to be more SD Express, less UHS2?
One of the challenges that we face as a hardware company when designing new products is thinking about longevity, especially when the product serves as a bridge to connect two different tools together. In this case, the SD expansion card is bridging products like cameras, 3D printers, and single-board computers with a laptop. So when the hardware team started working on the micro SD expansion card in early 2020, we thought that the UFS card format was going to be the industry standard. So we supported UFS. But by the time we started shipping micro SD expansion cards in mid-2021, manufacturers had largely stopped making UFS cards. So that feature went pretty much unused. And that's the exact scenario that we're trying to avoid with the SD expansion card. My cameras and others on the market have 2 full-size SD card slots which support UHS-2. But there are other cameras out there that support CF Express or SD Express. While the hardware team could create a product that helps satisfy their coworkers' needs, the tools that I use aren't necessarily representative of the market at large or how the market will continue to evolve as brands continue to create and release new cameras. So then, we do some research and hedge our bets. And for the SD expansion card, we're putting our money on UHS-2. Anthony, our electrical engineer, also has 2 challenges to face regarding the SD expansion card. Supporting UHS-2 and making sure that the expansion card is as power efficient as possible. The hardware team has spent the past 3 years learning how different Intel and AMD platforms work and discovering various power-related quirks. And now, it's time to put that knowledge to the test. The SD expansion card has to be as efficient as possible when it is in use, and not draw any power at all when there's no card in it, regardless of which platform it's on. Now that we've decided on a mechanical and electrical direction for this product, it's time to figure out how the heck this thing is going to get made. And that's where supply chain manager Adila comes in. She does have an expansion card manufacturer to work with, and it's BizLink, the same company that's made all of our expansion cards to date. And BizLink does a lot. Alfie, Esther, Anthony, and Adila aren't working on the SD expansion card full time. We have a few other products, like the Framework Laptop 16, that require a little bit more time and attention from our crew. But part-time efforts aren't enough to engineer and manufacture a product that requires full-time attention. Instead, we work on a joint development model, or JDM. We partner with engineers and operations staff at BizLink on detailed design, validation, sourcing, and manufacturing. Every fastener, plastic or metal part, chip, and connector needs to be manufactured and sourced. BizLink also uses their purchasing power and scale to drive that more efficiently than we can. They also handle PCBA manufacturing, final test, assembly, and pack out of the finished product. So that's everything I have to share with you so far. And it's a lot. So here's a little rundown of everything that happened. We confirmed as a team that the SD expansion card is a product that we want to pursue, and we just wrapped up defining the product requirements. Here are the product requirements that we defined as a team for the SD expansion card. We're using the standard expansion card form factor for this product. This means that Alfie, our mechanical engineer, will have to create a custom card receptacle and work with Anthony, our electrical engineer, to squeeze the electrical design into a layout space that will fit into the standard expansion card housing. This also means that Adila, our supply chain manager, and BizLink, our SD card manufacturer, will collaborate to find a receptacle maker to work with us on this project. Our SD expansion card will support UHS-2 interfaces. We're betting that the camera and SD card industries will continue to use and adopt UHS interfaces. And last but not least, the SD expansion card will be designed to be as power efficient as possible on both Intel and AMD platforms. Now that we have product requirements, architecture set, and a supplier selected, the hardware team is going to package all of this information into a concept proposal. Once the concept proposal is set, we'll move on to EVT, where our teams will design and validate the first full version of the product.